Okay, fine. I'll admit it. I like Marvel movies.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I know. How dare I, film school major, serious YouTube critic, be a fan of Marvel slop? Well, I don't know. But as someone who takes writing seriously, I'm not immune to looking at critiques of the MCU, or of making them myself, as you will soon see. And the number one complaint that I very often see about Marvel movies all the time, other than the they are all the same one, which I don't really agree with, is that classic Marvel dialogue. The, whoa, he's right behind me, isn't he? Whoa, aren't we in a pickle? And I don't get it. I mean, I understand the annoyance of that style of dialogue, but I don't totally understand what exactly that style is. I suppose the better question to ask is, what is a quip? Exactly? I mean, I can describe a quip, I just did, but I don't know how to define it. Is there any difference between a quip, a joke, banter, and witty dialogue? And what is it about quips that people seem to hate so much? Over the past few months, these questions have been plaguing my mind. As someone who loves media, wants to be a writer, and has a particular interest in dialogue, I want to understand. I want to learn. It intrigues me so. And so I started at the place that 99% of research begins, Googling the definition, which was not extremely helpful. The best definition that Google has given me is a short, witty remark. And while that technically fits, I don't know if it's specific enough to exactly describe this phenomenon that people are seeing. It feels kind of weird to say that people don't like witty dialogue or jokes. Who doesn't like a joke? And when I see people describe quips, it usually is that, what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad sort of dialogue, which to me doesn't necessarily feel the same as just a joke. A quip is just something that, when it appears, you can point it out, but I can't seem to find the words to describe it. So naturally, I turned to other people to describe it for me. That's right, I searched on YouTube, the very same platform you're watching this video on. Unfortunately, still none of the videos I watched gave me a specific definition on quips. But that doesn't mean I didn't get any useful information out of it. For one, this style of dialogue is also known as Whedonisms, named after director Joss Whedon and his specific style of dialogue, popularized in shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was brought over to the MCU when he wrote and directed Avengers in 2011. Although Whedon cannot take sole credit for the casual quipping, as it was already being set into precedent in films like Iron Man, a film that really only had the bones of a script, and director Jon Favreau let his actors improvise from there, which is a practice that would later become commonplace in several other MCU films. The natural improvisation combined with Whedon's well-known quips gave us the Marvel dialogue that we know today. Although, by this point, natural is kind of a stretch. Which leads me to the first problem with this kind of dialogue. It's extremely forced, and everyone can see that it's extremely forced. These films have a desperation to be constantly funny, overusing the idea of a quip. For me, I never really noticed this kind of dialogue for a long time, because I am, to quote Markiplier, a giggly bitch. And I like things that don't take themselves totally seriously. Part of what I liked about the MCU initially was that it was kind of silly and ridiculous, especially when you compare it to its competition. I and many others have kind of soured on Marvel and its respective distinct dialogue. The quips that made the dialogue feel quick and witty have now been placed everywhere, to the point where every script is so bloated with jokes, it's hard to find any moment of sincerity. Darren, just stop trying to be whatever this is. I don't know what to be. tell me what to be. I don't know, just don't be a dick. It's too late. Look at me. I'm such a dick. It's never too late to stop being a dick. And when you're forcing quips to fill every moment, they're not always going to be funny. In fact, they are mostly not going to be funny. And not only are you not making your audience laugh, they can tell what you're trying and failing to do. They can see you forcing these square jokes into the circle script. The MCU seems to think that quips make their characters seem cool or laid back. If they're apathetic about tense situations they are in, that must mean that they are a great badass. But it doesn't make your characters seem cool, it makes your writers seem condescending.
In contrast, saying, "Oh great," when something not great is going on, or saying, "that just happened," after something happens, is not comedy. It's just a character being facetious. But the usual effect of a character being sarcastic or facetiously oversharing in an otherwise po-faced setting is that that character comes across like an absolute smarmy ponce.
Really, all this does is create For those who don't know, bathos is a term that describes a jarring sensation that is created when a humorous moment is placed in a serious scene. But here's the point. She betrayed Ronan. He's coming back for her. And when he does, that's when you... Why would I put my finger on his throat? What? Oh no, it's a symbol. This is a symbol. For you. Slicing his throat. I would not slice his throat. Normally, scenes have an ebb and flow to them. There are comedic moments and serious moments that naturally and slowly flow into one another. Bathos happens when you delete the natural flow, interrupting the serious scenes with a wacky joke! This is what leads audiences to feel as though they are being talked down to. This is what leads to this annoyed response. Instead of allowing its audience members to sit in dramatic moments, they are instead cut short by a joke. We don't receive the scene we were expecting and wanting to get.
And there's an element to bathos that feels almost wasteful sometimes. As mentioned, the number one reason a plot twist can disappoint is if the theoretical untwisty version of events strikes the audience as more interesting or satisfying or fun to explore. And that means if you set up something profound and then deliver an empty punchline instead of a powerful moment, the loss of that potential moment can feel bad. Storytelling involves a process of planting and payoff, and if the thing you plant isn't the thing you pay off, you're gonna gradually teach your audience not to trust your storytelling to pay off the cool ideas you have planted. And an audience that can't trust a story is an audience that will struggle to get invested in the story. Like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, the story that cried punchline will train its audience to always anticipate a joke or a quip. And if the story does finally indulge in a moment of uninterrupted sincerity for a crucial moment in the plot, the audience might have trouble taking the moment at face value if they're too busy glancing around for the custard pie.
We miss out on the things we wanted to see. Drama, romance, tension, all for the sake of a quick line. We lose the moments that we were looking forward to. And as a result, we can't fully get immersed in the tension of the film. When the characters are not taking the moments they are in seriously, we in turn cannot take the film seriously. That's not to say that all bathos is bad or should be avoided. While generally it's not something you want, it can be used to great effect. Sometimes the joke is funnier because the seriousness of the moment makes us not expect it. But there are also many, many times when a film really needs to kill its darlings. Sometimes a joke is successful and funny, but what you sacrifice in the scene is bigger than what you gain. There's no point in having one funny joke if you lose all the character work you're building in the process.
Are you guys okay?
Yeah, we're fine. What about Murphy?
Well, that's not a great start to Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I'll say. What a, nonchalant thing to say when their dog just died in front of them. Sorry about that, kids. But you know how Mondays can be.
The extra problem, though, is that very often these jokes are not funny. They don't flow well. Again, something that is done on purpose, but that creates very awkward moments. These quippy lines more often than not interrupt the flow of the scene, sucking any tension there was out of the movie, and also being too awkward to be funny. That's how old I was when he set me at my first assignment. I was willing to do anything he wanted. If he asked me to burn the world down, I would have asked him, beef or vegetarian? We're all out of the chicken, so I can only offer you beef or vegetarian. Vegetarian would be great. Yeah, same. Okay, thank you. Oh. We're out of the vegetarian too. Now we only have beef. Beef. Because that's all you have, right? Okay, you'll have the beef, and the beef. 2 beefs. A scene like this comes screeching to a halt in order to fill space with a dumb bit. And there are some scenes that are just infected with it, poisoning the dialogue until it becomes some of the worst I have ever heard. And it isn't like these films are trying to be like Airplane, a direct absurdist parody where the only purpose is really just to make you laugh. These films still try to have serious discussions about issues people faced, but very often they ruin their own point by turning it into a piece of humor. Extremely quippy movies don't work because they fail to straddle the line. They're not absurdist enough for you to just accept the strangeness of how they sound, but they also don't take themselves seriously enough for you to buy into the serious moments. And that sort of issue has consequences in the script. It weirdly makes me think of an anime that I just watched recently that was called... let's see, what was it called? Windbreaker? It was called Windbreaker? Oh no, guys! Look out! It's the Windbreaker! Oh no, guys! He's gonna do his special attack! Guys, look out! Look out! He's breaking wind! Listen, I wouldn't be making these jokes if they didn't include a space between wind and breaker. Now, this show doesn't really have a problem with its dialogue. What it does have, though, is a problem with its characters. See, the show is about this school of fighting children, and no, I don't know where the adults are, and they face off against this other evil school of fighting children, and no, I don't know where the adults are. They're basically gangs, but made up of an entire school where they don't go to school and they don't have teachers. Now, the show works really hard to make this evil school seem intimidating, and it works at first. Its leaders are fucking crazy, they turn on their own members if they lose, they're obsessed with being strong, and equally as obsessed with taking down the good school. It's all great setup, and the kids decide that they're going to have a tournament of one-on-one fights. Yay! You've done it! Good job! We have nice stakes, and things are relatively tense. Except... you wanna know who wins each of these fights? The good guys. Seriously, the bad guys appear, challenge the good guys, and then proceed to get their asses thoroughly handed to them. Almost every single one of these one-on-one fights is exactly the same. The good guy shows up, he's cocky, he doesn't take the fight seriously, and he wipes the floor with the bad guy. By the end of this tournament, not only was I severely bored, I was questioning to myself, are these guys even a fucking threat? Half of these people they're fighting are freshmen, and they still can't win, 'cause they're bad, and useless, and not a threat. Obviously, again, this is a different problem than dialogue, but the conclusion is the same. If your main character is so cool and cocky and sarcastic and powerful that they don't take the villain seriously, then we won't take the villain seriously, and there's not going to be any tension in the film, and I'm gonna be bored. Now, sometimes that is intentional. If there's like a joke villain that we already were not meant to take seriously, it's alright for our main characters to be making fun of them, especially if they are not the main threat. But if your characters are literally bullying your main antagonist, and the main antagonist can't respond or back it up, then I'm not gonna be afraid of them. I'm not gonna fear for our protagonist. And I will in fact be bored. This is the result of making your characters seem like these cool, tough badasses. If your characters are overpowered or they're too facetious to take things seriously, what's the point? When you flood every scene with quips like this, you run the risk of your audience losing interest in your plot. And the worst part is that quips can interrupt any scene, because anyone can say them at any time. They're just a sarcastic line. They don't need setup. oh my god, I figured it out. There's no setup. That's what it is. That's the difference between a quip and a joke. That's why they so often suck so much, because quips can be used at any time. Sometimes it even requires them to not have setup in order to catch the audience by surprise. That's the secret! Alright, after all this time and research and ranty discussions, I think I am finally ready to define what a quip is. Now, I'm still not sure if I hit exactly on the money. Feel free to leave your own definitions in the comments. But here is my best shot. A quip is a short, quick-witted piece of sarcastic dialogue designed to make the character seem funny or cool. They are singular lines and thus not banter. Banter implies a back and forth between two characters. While they can and very often do include quips, it's not necessary for banter.
Tell them what you're doing. It's time. Are you sure? I am not going to lie for you right after Yom Kippur. I'm not going to blow a year's worth of sinning in the first 2 hours.
Okay, if you say so.
And not a word about me knowing about the stand-up thing ahead of time.
So you want me to lie?
Like a Bible salesman.
You want me to blow a year's worth of sinning in the first 2 hours?
Sharp as a tack. Now, do you have any more of Ethan's chocolate in that purse of yours?
Focus on the bad news. As of now, you have detected 0 multiversal trespassers. So get on your phones, scour the internet, Scooby-Doo this shit! Quips are also not exactly the same as a joke. Both provide wit and humor, but a joke requires the use of setup and punchline. Although setup can be used for a quip, it's not necessary, as characters can state them at any time. What are you, some saint all of a sudden? What has the galaxy ever done for you? Why would you want to save it? Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it! You alright? That was close. I owe you one. Let me just say, if aliens wind up implanting eggs in my chest or something and I end up eating one of you, and that's the reason quips are so disliked. They are jokes that can be stated at any time, and they are very often used to cut through serious moments, creating the jarring effect called bathos we discussed earlier. This bathos undercuts serious moments, ruins character moments, and interrupts the flow of the film, all for the sake of a bit. Something that usually isn't even perceived as funny due to the overuse of quips and their predictable, awkward nature. And there! I have finally figured it out. But you can see the runtime on this video. That's right, we're not done yet, because we really need to put these thoughts to the test. And in order to do so, I went back and rewatched what I thought people would consider to be the quippiest Marvel film and analyzed its dialogue. Oh, sorry about that. That was just the sound of me slamming my face into the wall to try and forget this movie's existence. I definitely hit the jackpot when it comes to quippy films, because not only does this film actually include they're behind me, aren't they? But they also do the Jane, you go right, Thor, you go left. We bum rush them, take the bolt, and we're off. I thought that only existed in memes! Oh my god, they're real! Next thing you know, they're gonna be saying, what are we, some kind of Love and Thunder? But to those who know them best, they are simply known as Love and Thunder. Oh, come on! The quips don't stop at the cliche ones, either. That would make this too easy. They just keep coming over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. This script is so bloated with quips that there are genuinely entire scenes that are nothing but quips. My hope for you is that one day you will find something to make you feel this shit. I have loved before. It didn't work out. They either die a grismal death or they dump you with a handwritten letter. I don't know which is worse, but it's why I keep everyone at arm's length. You've grown too attached, damn it, I knew this would happen. You must go. I'll find Sif. You answer the other calls, the galaxy needs its guardians. Cool, yeah, we were just, shh, I know it hurts. But it's better this way, you have to trust me. To ease the pain, why don't you, take this ship here as a parting farewell gift. Oh, you're giving me my ship? Yes, it's yours. May you make as many memories with her as I have. She's a temperamental old lass. She'll serve you well in a tight pickle. I'll start the ship. Thank you. Goodbye, old friend. human handshake, to the Asgardian shake, into the snake that you cannot trust. Really dragging this out. I wouldn't even really call this banter either, because as I said, banter implies a sort of back and forth. But instead of having a conversation that has natural chemistry, each of these lines yanks the focus of the scene back and forth so that it changes to each character. They're both fighting for attention. It's so unfunny that every single line halts the scene again and again and again, like someone who doesn't know how to drive stick shift. And there are multiple scenes that are exactly like this. And the worst part is that in the rare moments where the dialogue is not just quips, it's also bad. Like, extremely bad. So bad, in fact, I feel forced to drag this video off in a totally different direction just to talk about this movie more. This was supposed to be a short section. This will not be a short section. In fact, I need to break this section into sections, because sections are the only way my brain thinks. Now, Thor Love and Thunder does actually have 2 female leads in it, but they're all so flat I've decided to lump them together. Kinda like the movie does with their personalities. Valkyrie is probably the most fine, which makes sense because she was the one that was included in Ragnarok. But she was good in that film because she had depth and intrigue. Here, they don't do anything with her. They give her some setup that tries to explore how she feels about being king that is well done, but they never go into depth with it. This is going to be a repeating pattern. She doesn't have a character arc beyond the beginning of one, and they don't explore who she is or how she feels at all. Therefore, she is flat. But really, Valkyrie's issues have nothing on the biggest problem with the female leads in this, which is a problem I will demonstrate by asking this question. Who is this person? She's carrying baby Thor, so I'm led to believe it's supposed to be Frigga, but the bad CGI makes it so hard to tell. Frigga. You know, the caring mother who would never send her baby into battle. Frigga, the gentle magic user. That's not to say you can't show Frigga leading a battle. She is Asgardian after all, but in both films, she was never shown to be like this. And you may be saying that this is a 2-second clip. It's a nitpick that I'm making, and yes, that's true, but I've always said the details matter. And in this case, this 2-second clip is emblematic of a larger issue. That larger issue being Jane Foster! This film doesn't know how to write Jane Foster, so instead of, trying, they make her more like Valkyrie. She's only been a Thor for a minute. I mean, saving lives she's quite good at, but the rest of it she needs work. You're telling me that Jane Foster, the scientist shut-in, is a great natural fighter who is good at saving lives? What? They try to act like she is tough, strong, and battle-obsessed. I mean, look at the way that she is drooling over these weapons. This isn't Jane Foster at all. It's Valkyrie. And even though she only appears for 2 seconds, they somehow manage to do the same to Frigga. Every one of these girls is suddenly a tough, strong warrior type. And I swear to God, if you stinky men try to come into the comments and say, oh, it's because Marvel is too woke now. No, Marvel is not woke enough. If they were, they would have variety in their female characters. I don't have a problem with girls being the tough, strong warrior type. I love Valkyrie. She was a great character in Ragnarok. But these characters are not Valkyrie. So why are we working to make them all the same? Why can't we have differences in our female characters? And now I can hear the people, that's you, saying, oh, I thought this video was supposed to be about dialogue. Why are you spending so much time talking about the characters? But if you saw my Moana video, you know that elements in story affect each other. The dialogue informs the audience what kind of person this character is, and in turn, when characters change and grow, their dialogue will be affected. Because Jane Foster is not acting like Jane Foster from before, her dialogue sounds weird and unnatural. I want to kill this guy. And because these characters are being twisted until they all act the same. They're gonna sound the same in the dialogue. I'm bashing heads in 60 seconds, so speak fast. Literally, heads will roll. Jane Foster should be struggling in fights, and we should get to see her improve as time goes. She should have a different, more tactical way to approach using the hammer, which would go nicely with its new ability, but still struggle when taking down enemies. You know, like a smart scientist person would be. I mean, she gets like 2 scenes where she gets to talk shop, and then her being a scientist is like never brought up again. You'd think that sort of trait would affect her personality, but no! Perhaps she studies the hammer to understand its magical properties more, both in an attempt to be a better fighter and in desperation to understand what it is that's healing her. Perhaps instead of being unnaturally excited for battle in these scenes, the comedy could come from her being concerned, not ready to step into battle yet, which would contrast her and Valkyrie and make the dialogue in their scenes more dynamic. That's not to say Jane shouldn't be a strong fighter who never gives up. The film just misunderstands what that kind of person is. The strongest fighters are not the people who are literally the strongest or the most battle competent or the coolest badasses. They are the people who fight anyways, when they are not those things. The fact that Jane still wants to help Asgard despite having no experience and stage 4 cancer already makes her the strongest. You don't have to lie to your audience and pretend that she's a different person than she was before to make her seem cooler or stronger. In fact, doing so makes her less interesting, and by extension, the conversations she has are less interesting. Let's see, is that all I had to say about the women in this? Oh my god, I went this entire time without even bringing up what they did to my queen, Lady Sif. How dare they turn her into a 5-second joke that doesn't even make sense? You deserve so much better! Ah! The degradation and flanderization of Thor's character is something that I think needs to be studied. Thor is someone who started as a destructive brute, then grew and became a kind, wise, gentle giant, to a kind, wise, gentle himbo, to bumbling idiot. At this point, it's not character growth, it's the worst case of flanderization I have ever seen, and it slowly made him into the worst part of his own movie franchise. Now don't get me wrong, he was already losing brain cells by Ragnarok, but at least he wasn't totally lobotomized yet. In that movie, some of the old Thor was still peeking through, and the new changes had kind of a weird charm to them. Plus, that film didn't lose sight of what was important to its character. He still had an arc, he still learned and grew, and the movie knew when to hold back and let the emotional moments take over. Thor Love and Thunder does none of that. Instead, Love and Thunder takes all of that character work and says, what if we replaced it with quips? My friends, we must not quarrel. Times like this, we need to unite, come together. I see what's happening here. You're afraid. Scared. Afraid. Anxious. If we are to find the children, we must first look within ourselves, and I'm sorry, Meek, it's very hard to give a rousing speech with the Thor is, for sure, the one who gets the most amount of quips in this film. It's like he physically can't stop himself from doing it. And with the amount of quips he specifically has, it completely destroys his character. For one, his personality has been entirely replaced with quips and jokes. And I'd say like over half of those quips and jokes are about him being dumb. Thor being a himbo in Ragnarok was charming because he had all those other character traits underneath it. This, meanwhile, is Sabrina Carpenter's definition of a man-child. Okay. I was going to put a montage of Thor being stupid to Sabrina Carpenter's Man-Child here, but if I did that, I would definitely get copyrighted to hell and back, and I'm already using a lot of Disney footage, so there's already a risk of that. So here's this instead. Stupid! Or is it slow? Maybe it's useless! But there's a cuter word for it. I know. Man-child, why you always come running to me? Fuck my life, won't you let an innocent woman be? Okay, that's as good as it's gonna get. I genuinely think there is like maybe 2 scenes in this movie where Thor is allowed to be serious. The rest of the time, any moments of genuineness get interrupted by Thor's new personality that won't stop spouting shitty quips. And the worst part is how all this affects his character arc, which is supposed to be what now? It's very obvious the film wants to have a serious discussion about grief, but it can't take itself seriously enough to do so. There's kind of an idea that Thor is being brash and not very careful when fighting, which is causing him to be destructive and self-destructive. There are many examples of this sort of action throughout the film, but they never do anything with it. He never takes accountability for this kind of behavior. This is all clearly behavior that is a result of Thor's grief, and in a better film, these destructive actions would lead to a breaking point where Thor goes too far and is then forced to confront his grief and take accountability for his destructive actions. But that doesn't happen. Instead, this behavior goes completely ignored. They don't even try to bring up the fact that Thor did not do his job as king and abandoned his people. The exact kind of sin that should be brought up in a movie where the main villain's whole point is that gods abandon their people. A very similar sentiment can be said about Thor's grief as a whole. You'd think, in a film supposedly about grief, we would discuss Thor's grief. Or at the very least, talk about any of the things that Thor has lost. I mean, that list is so long. You could literally just pick anything from it to bring up. Hell, I would even take bringing up Heimdall, considering his son is right there. I mean, come on! But no, his son just gets used as a plot device telephone instead of actually doing anything with that plot point. But outside of a few brief moments of exposition, because of course, and jokes, because of course, they don't. And the absence of any mention of what Thor has lost is really felt. It leaves spaces in the script where they want us to feel like Thor is experiencing grief, and they want us to have this great theme of it's better to have loved and lost than to never love at all. But how are we supposed to get either of those things if we never talk about the things Thor has loved and lost? It's less so like Thor is in denial about his grief, and more so like the film is in denial about his grief. I mean, it tells us over and over and over again that Thor is experiencing grief and mental trauma, and that he feels lost and doesn't know where to go. But even though they tell us that, we never actually see it. And just hearing about it isn't enough for us to actually feel it. In the brief moments where Thor's loss is shown, it is never taken seriously, because Thor is too busy being funny. This is hardly even just bathos anymore. We can't even get serious long enough to create the jarring effect that bathos has. Really, what this is taking the emotional core of the film and laughing at it. It definitely doesn't treat Thor's loss as bad as Endgame, but that's a low bar to clear. Rather than practically exploring the effects that grief has on a person, we are instead bullying the idea of grief? Why? And you can try and say that these moments of bathos are them exploring grief, because Thor is using humor as a coping mechanism. He is treating these serious moments with apathy because he doesn't want to properly acknowledge or process how he is feeling. You know, the thing that Thor is famous for. Something that Thor does all the time. Thor has done this in every single movie he's been in. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely not that they have never treated him like this before, not even in Ragnarok. No. He's not Tony Stark, yet they're treating him like he is. And even Tony Stark has breaking points. There are scenes in his films that are treated with the weight and sincerity that they deserve. There are points that force Tony to get past the humor coping mechanism. Of course there are! Because if we never get past it, we are never going to truly and fully understand why that character uses said coping mechanism. Side note, Guardians of the Galaxy is actually a really great example of this. Not only does it take Peter's loss seriously and actively shows him avoiding it in a serious way, refusing to take his mom's hand, refusing to open the present, etc., which is already, right at the start, explaining his personality. He uses humor as just another way to avoid serious moments. On top of that, him stupidly risking his life just to save his Walkman, the gift from his mother, shows how important her loss was to him, even if he'd never admit it. And then at the very end, he accepts the hand from the vision of his mother and opens the gift, showing how he has accepted family back into his life again. It is that easy! And there is one brief moment where they almost seem to understand this. One moment where something happens that breaks through Thor's barriers. Korg is seemingly killed in front of him. It happens again. Thor has lost another friend. And in that moment, all of the previous grief that Thor had been repressing, every loss that he has felt forces itself back towards the surface. He can't fight his emotions anymore. All he feels is uncontrollable rage. And when Zeus tries to kill him next, Thor catches the lightning bolt. It makes sense. They're both gods of lightning, after all. Power fills his body, and without thinking, with barely any moments of hesitation, he throws the bolt back, killing Zeus. A guy who, just a mere 10 minutes ago, Thor was calling his hero. On top of that, Thor is the most important guy in a room full of gods. It's an action that is brash and stupid. And if Thor was thinking straight, he never would have done it. But he wasn't. He was running on pure anger and grief. It's another example of Thor's destructive behavior due to his decaying mental state, and it's actually an excellent piece of character work. And then Thor says this that's the sound of lightning. You'd think that maybe, they might actually take the time and address this moment. You'd think they would allow the script to slow down and to take a breath and allow Thor to think about the gravity of what he has just done and how those last few minutes affected him. Now would be the time where the destructive behavior goes too far and forces him to confront his grief. But instead, we get not one, I can't believe you killed Zeus. Well, you know what they say, never meet your heroes. Not two, Korg is dead. He's not dead. I'm not dead. No, well, he's ahead. And you got properly humiliated. No, I got properly naked, which I am okay with. But 3 jokes about what just happened. Everything is fine. We did great back there. We killed Zeus. You killed Zeus. I mean, that may or may not be catastrophic for the whole universe. And sure, the entire God Kingdom is probably gonna hunt us down for the rest of our days. But listen, you stole this beautiful weapon.
I'm just asking for what happens on the screen to mean something. If there are no consequences when something happens, then it does not matter that it happened.
There is only so long you can have your character deflect. At this point, it's not Thor deflecting his issues, it's the writers doing it. It's the writers that for some reason don't want to talk about his problems. The angst would have been so easy to write, but they don't. And you might be noticing that, once again, like with the ladies, I'm focusing a lot on character. But when you have no character arc and you're not sure what your character is supposed to be doing, you have to force the dialogue to make up for it. I don't know if I want that again. Is that because you lost your girlfriend in battle and never forgave yourself? And now you're just trying to find answers at the bottom of a bottle or some meaningless dalliance, which only serves to numb the pain, instead of bringing you real happiness or satisfaction? And the dialogue in this movie is having to work hard to make up for it. 90% of the dialogue that isn't just quips is extremely exposition heavy. I mean, that may or may not be catastrophic for the whole universe. And this film is just allergic to show don't tell. It has to bluntly and awkwardly tell you every single thing about its characters. It tells you who they are, it tells you what their backstory is, it tells you how they're feeling and why they're feeling that way. It has no trust in its audience to be able to figure it out for themselves. It has to tell you everything! And you can feel that in Thor's extremely confusing arc as well. In my Moana video, yes, I'm bringing it back up again, I discussed how character arc is built upon a want and a need. Thor wants to keep his heart closed and push away people, but he needs to learn to open his heart to others, and that it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And I know all this because they told it to us directly in the most on-the-nose, blatant way possible. This film starts with them telling us that Thor keeps his heart closed and people at a distance. I don't know which is worse, but it's why I keep everyone at arm's length. Then we get several minutes of Thor interacting with friends and loved ones and not acting very distant. We get one scene of Thor getting emotional and that is immediately forgotten about, and it's followed up by him once again directly stating that he doesn't want to keep people at arm's length anymore. I pushed people away, kept them at a distance because of the fear of that loss. I don't want to do that anymore. I feel like we're skipping over a lot here. You know, like all the scenes where you show us Thor acting distant, or all the times he has to fail, struggle, learn a lesson, and grow from it. This is exactly what I mean. Without these 2 moments of dialogue, there is literally no character arc here. It's so non-existent they have to take time in the dialogue to tell and explain to us what his arc was supposed to be. And past this point, Thor is suddenly a lot more mature and grounded, as if he's completed a character arc. But we skipped over all that. His destructive nature is gone without ever being recognized as a problem by him. He fixes his relationship with Jane almost magically, and as for grief, he suddenly seems to know and understand the theme of the movie.
Jane, none of us know how long we have. We don't know what tomorrow holds. And Mjolnir chose you. Chose you because you're worthy. And that's something. So whatever you want to do, we can do together. Now what do you want to do? I want to get those children back to their families. I want to finish that mission. Spoken like a true Thor.
We still have an hour left, and our main character has already, quote-unquote, completed a character arc. This is supposedly somebody in emotional distress due to grief. He should be entering another spiral at this point, especially after Jane reveals she has stage 4 cancer, because Thor uses Jane coming back into his life as a crutch to avoid processing his grief. She fills that empty hole that's left by loss. At least it seems like that's what they were going for. So having this emotional crutch suddenly tell you, hey, I'm dying and I'm not going to be around for long, should cause more anxiety. Yet Thor responds to it by having this mature speech. Ironically, this would be a great time to really show Thor pushing people away and keeping them at arm's length, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he brings her closer. I get it if you want to say that this is all pretend and he's just acting and deflecting again, but this doesn't feel like acting. This is genuine advice. This whole scene just feels wrong. It's like the dialogue was all written without any character stuff in mind, and they're kissing now. They're kissing now. Okay. Great. And they try to backpedal Thor a little by having him beg Jane to stay behind and get treatment, but it's already too late. He spends the rest of the film, which is again, an hour, being weirdly emotionally balanced and not changing much at all. Oh, except we do get the moral directly stated a few more times.
I choose love. You can too. You can bring her back.
And look, there's nothing wrong with directly stating a few things. I think people give exposition a bad rap. It's necessary sometimes. But when you're at the point where characters directly state their motivations, arcs are made up of moments that are directly stated, emotions are directly stated, and your moral has to be directly stated multiple times, and you pad between all this exposition with nothing but quips and your main characters acting like buffoons, then your dialogue is just bad. But the worst part of this movie, surprisingly, it's not Thor. I know I said it was earlier, but it really isn't. The worst part of this movie is when it works.
Did you pray to the gods when the women you loved lay dying on the battlefield?
I don't know what the fuck the writers were on when writing Gorr's scenes, but every time he shows up, things just suddenly get so much better. It's like it's almost a functioning movie. It's kind of beautiful. Don't get me wrong, his scenes are not perfect. They are still incredibly clunky at times.
You know what Upty loves? Having his head ripped off.
But they improve so much, it's hard to believe that this is the same movie. Take this first scene, for example. It's edited so much slower than the rest of the film. It's haunting and chilling. And on top of that, we learn so much information about Gorr right off the bat with very little dialogue being used. He's creepy and freaky, and we kind of understand him in a way. And because he has that moral ground to stand on, it creates an interesting conversation, especially when you add Thor. Of the three main characters, he's the only one here who you could really call a full god. Yes, I know Valkyrie is from Asgard and is also the king, but they never call her a god. And that fact immediately sets him in the place to be the most hated by Gorr, especially if you actually use the idea of Thor abandoning his people, the thing that Gorr hates gods doing. They are also already being set up to be perfect character parallels. They are both characters going through grief, they are both experiencing mental trauma as a result of it, and both of them at certain points ask the gods for help and is not only turned away, but laughed at, and then they respond to that by killing a god. Not that they want to take that moment seriously for Thor. There's actually a lot of good, juicy setup here. They have this dynamic of hating each other, yet being a reflection of each other. Which is why it is so extremely frustrating when they don't do anything with that. Everything I just said is almost completely ignored in favor of Thor being the joke machine. Gorr literally has to shut him up in order to get a word in. Even the good parts get turned into bad parts the second Thor comes on screen. He's like some kind of shitty movie version of Wonder of You. Instead of causing calamity whenever he's pursued, he jerks the film back to being bad whenever he's on screen, because they're so obsessed with making him dumb and silly. And you want to know what serious lines of dialogue we do get between Thor and Gorr?
We're alike in that sense.
That's what you're gonna do with the interesting conversation between Thor and Gorr? The most cliche possible line? I don't need to have my hand held. I have f***ing eyeballs. I can see that they are the same! It's not hard to see. And I even almost want to compliment you, because the setup for these character parallels is so well done and so clear. Except they don't do anything with it, but point at it and go, look what we did! I can see! And yeah, you heard that right? That's pretty much all the conversation we get between Gorr and Thor. Are you kidding me? You have a guy who's called the God Butcher facing up against a guy whose entire god family was killed. And you're not gonna do anything with that? Just give me like one.
Time to end your family line.
Or,
too bad your family died before I could get to them.
Or,
are you ready to die afraid like your useless brother?
Just like a single reference to his grief. Please. It doesn't have to be exactly those. I thought those up in 2 seconds. You can totally come up with something more refined. But no. Gorr gets good moments with the other two main characters, but since it's Thor, we're not allowed. We have to be funny for some reason.
Call the axe.
I'll call the axe when you call the dentist. I think that's the thing that pisses me off the most about this movie. It's almost something. It actually had a lot of good ideas, and it clearly wanted to say something. But instead of actually saying it, we waste our time on bit after bit after bit. They're so long and take up so much time in the movie. One thing I haven't brought up until this point is that the editing also sucks ass. It's probably the worst part of this movie, because everything has to rush from one thing to the next. Couldn't find them! Oh, Thor, your cape's on fire! It's fine, it'll grow back. I'm invoicing you for this. Listen, what do we know about this guy? He travels through shadows, and he creates monsters with them. Absolutely freaky monsters. He also wields the necro sword. How do I know that? Because he almost speared me in the face with it. What's the necro sword? It's an ancient weapon. It's been passed through hands. There's a constant go, 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 go feeling in the pacing, as if I'm being grabbed and shook around while someone is screaming, laugh! And I think that's likely because the film wastes so much time and air. It doesn't feel like a lot, but cutting 1 minute of lightning bolt tricks could be spread out throughout the rest of the film, allowing moments like these to breathe for a second, allowing the dialogue to breathe for a second, allowing the dialogue to actually be a little slower and more natural and serious. I'm kind of surprised just how many problems in this movie affect the dialogue and vice versa.
It's like the dialogue here is a rot that spreads throughout the rest of the film and causes everything else to break down. This is why I say details matter. At the end of the day, dialogue and editing and pacing all feel like such small things, yet you can see here how too many problems with the small things will absolutely tear your movie to shreds and leave nothing left. It's not a stab wound, it's death by 1,000 cuts. See, the pun here is that you can get a cut on a person, but in editing, you can also cut. Laugh! It's not even very interesting dialogue. It's extremely basic by Marvel standards. Another thing I haven't mentioned is how the style of dialogue from the first 2 Thor movies is completely and totally gone by Thor: Love and Thunder. I know the slight Old English pissed some people off, but at least it was Thor's thing. You could tell the difference between Thor and Captain America and Tony, because it has style to it. It isn't just solely quips, it had personality. Clearly, when it comes to Marvel's dialogue, the quips are not the only problem, far from it. When it's at its worst, there are issues spread all throughout the films. The sheer amount of quips only goes to further the problems that are at the core of the script. The quips aren't necessarily at fault, they are just a symptom of the disease. Which leads me to a new question. Is there any point where quips work? I mean, Marvel got popular in the first place in part because of its quipping dialogue, which at the time was seen as refreshing. Clearly there is something in here that people liked. Me personally, I'm not okay with Scooby-Doo this shit! But for some reason I am okay with... Oh dear, is she dead? If you watch my channel, you should know at this point that I adore Loki. Like, love Loki. And he's one of the most quipping characters. If it's all the same to you, I'll have that drink now. But he doesn't irk me like Thor in Love and Thunder did. So maybe it's not the quips that are the problem, it's the way they are used. When I was doing my research on why people dislike quips, I found that people seemed to be pretty cynical about them, which is to be expected. I was specifically looking for negative opinions, so it tracks. But I don't think that's necessarily fair. I do believe that quips can be used correctly. They're a tool, after all, and any tool can be used successfully or poorly. It's easy to point and laugh at a film like Love and Thunder, but there are other films that are remembered fondly that use the same tool. What I think is extremely important here is context. A character like Loki is a narcissist who doesn't care about others and therefore doesn't see the situation as serious. On top of that, he's a character who deflects and hides every important emotion. An illusionist and shapeshifter who never shows their true face. This comedy does undercut the scene, but it works because Loki is trying to undercut the scene. All of this humor is just another illusion he puts over himself. It actually makes the conversation here more believable. In addition, you don't necessarily lose any tension because the other characters around Loki are still responding appropriately. In fact, in this scene specifically, Thor being kind of a straight man and angrily responding to Loki's constant quipping only goes to add to the humor. Bang! 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 I think you missed a column. Shut up! It's a little something beyond just quips that makes it even more funny. If this was Love and Thunder, then Thor would say something like,
Whoa, Loki, it's okay, we'll figure it out.
And then he'd crash into something else and be like,
Pretend that didn't happen.
or some other kind of brain-dead, lobotomized response. And he would also never be the one to cook up this kind of plan because he'd be too stupid for it. See, the context matters. If you take the same quotes and put them with another character in another situation, it's not going to be as funny. And it's not like there aren't serious moments in this movie, or serious moments with Loki. They know when to hold back on the comedy and to just let the characters do their thing. And yes, I am giving compliments to Dark World. Shut up, I like this movie. Yes, I actually do like this movie. I'll make a video about it one day, I promise. For sure, just not today, we gotta move on. So what's the lesson we can take away here? Well, I think there's a few things.
First of all, and quite possibly the most important, is that you cannot please everybody. Some people are going to be seeking out movies with quips in them, whereas some are going to hate any quip, even if it's used well. I can just picture the hate comments right now, telling me that every single quip ever sucks, and every single Marvel movie sucks, and I suck for liking Marvel movies. Especially with something like comedy, it's all going to be very subjective. What is funny to someone isn't very funny to someone else. But on a more case-by-case basis, it's important to understand what kind of tone your story needs to have, as well as what your specific style calls for. In a film like Ragnarok, quips are commonplace and make sense, whereas something like The Shawshank Redemption, it really should hold back a little on the funny bits. It's all really up to you. Pick what you want and stick with it. And to go even more detailed, remember that every line of dialogue should have value and importance. And that includes quips. Sure, jokes and quips don't really do anything to further the plot, but they can do more than just provide humor. They say a lot about the kind of character you're writing, and that can add to your story. It's important to ask yourself, what is this line saying? What is this adding? And if your conclusion to that question is that it adds nothing, and the character you're writing for is the type to take this seriously, then it's time to consider cutting the quip. Even if your joke is funny and lands for people, you lose more than you gain. Just try to remember restraint. Even for characters that are quippy, they need moments of seriousness, genuineness, moments that break through the quips, even in some of the silly fun movies. Because if your characters don't take your story seriously, your audience won't take your story seriously. And even if you want to use a lot of humor in your film, you should mix it up. Yes, quips can be good. Yes, really they can. And they create funny and witty dialogue when used right. But consider using other types of comedy, such as physical comedy, or comedic irony, or just a straight plain joke. If you're too consistent with the type of comedy you use, people are going to start to predict your jokes, which is never going to be as good as the #1 rule in comedy, to subvert expectations. I've included some links down below to some videos on how to write comedy in case you want to know more about what to do instead of what not to do. I've also included links to every video I have quoted or referenced in this one, because I am not a coward who doesn't cite her sources. I feel like a lot of old Marvel understood that restraint. Yes, they still included a lot of quips, but they did so in a way that felt more natural and casual. And they included a lot of depth for the main characters, exploring themes you wouldn't expect in a superhero movie. That's not to say that everything Marvel has put out since Endgame is bad, because I don't agree with that take, for many reasons. But I do feel like they have lost their audience over the years. And if they want to get that audience back, they should remember to have their characters speak with authenticity. There seems to be a rising fear of being genuine. Our current culture has been raised on the idea that showing who you are sincerely is cringe. People hide who they are, or deflect about the things they like, because, oh no, I just like this thing ironically. And this sort of idea reflects in our own art. Disney works tirelessly to fix CinemaSins level critiques and undo problematic mistakes, while simultaneously ripping out everything that made it special in the first place. Even in the things that are original, they're taking out the style, going for the same look, or the safest possible story in order to please everyone. They are afraid. And it seems as when the writers try to fill the space with a moment of sincerity, they become afraid again. Writing is extremely raw. It reveals the most inner parts of ourselves, and that can be scary to do. Perhaps these films feel as though the slight bit of protection they gain by undercutting themselves is worth it. But I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of dumb. Oh. He's right behind me, isn't he? That's Spanish Flea. I'll call the axe when you call the dentist. I'll call the axe when you call the dentist. I'll call the axe when you call the dentist.